What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Kisscapades podcast. Today I have a very, very special guest with me, and I'll just let her introduce herself. She can say what she does before we proceed with the questions. But I'm very excited about this episode because, when I watched her video online, I reached out and she responded immediately, unlike most Kenyans. So I was just like, yeah, let's do this. Let's do this. And I'll tell you what. No, just introduce yourself first, and then I'll take it off from there.
All right. So my name is Nandi Kegode,
Yeah.
and I specialize in emotional intelligence, effective communication,
Yeah.
and I am also a recovering addict, and so I try to share about that and talk about that as much as I can, because I don't feel as though it's talked about enough in our society today, and I think that we need help and we need to have a dialogue so that the people that really need assistance can be able to get it.
So that's a very nice introduction, by the way.
Thank you.
So what I'll tell you is, I wanted to tell you this, that, since this is something that's so important, and I think a lot of people can really learn like a lot from just what you went through and everything, because I bumped into her video on the, is it called Engage?
Engage, yeah.
Engage. Is it a Safaricom thing?
It is. It's sponsored by Safaricom Platinum.
Oh yeah, and since we're mentioning Safaricom, maybe a moment of silence for Mr. Bob Collimo.
Oh yeah.
He just passed away. And yeah, so may his soul rest in peace. So back to the interview, and as I was saying, since you've started doing your, what would you call it, the events or is it groupings and gatherings where you talk to people about this, the next time you're having one, if I'm free, because I do content creation, I'll come cover it for you for free.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I really appreciate that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just basically do groups every 10 days or so around Nairobi.
Yeah.
The next group will be on addiction awareness.
Yeah.
It's not pointing out anybody that has addiction. I'm just explaining what addiction is, the mindset of the addict, and why it's so complicated to understand, and sort of where the addict has to get to in order to want to make a change in their lives.
Okay, perfect. So let's go to the backstory, because that's where it's, I think, very interesting, and like it actually shocked me, because I think even from the rappers that I listened to their music too, I thought they were hardcore until I watched your video. Like, I'm so serious. I was just like, there is no way you could touch all these drugs and still be okay, because I know I really like music where people are talking about drugs, but I don't do drugs, right? But all these people, like, they glorify it a lot in music, and I think that's where a lot of young people shift because of depression, stress, and everything. But I just wanted to know your story. How did you end up in that state or that whole situation?
Well, the thing is kind of what they talk about in rap music, or what they talk about in music, is the fact that we're not taught anymore in our society to connect with ourselves, right? We're always chasing something, whether we're chasing grades, chasing a degree, chasing, an outfit, or whatever the case may be. And drugs allow you for a moment to gain complete and utter connection with yourself and your environment. So that's what, for me, became so addictive, was I'd go to Nairobi National Park, we'd go with our friends and we'd go and watch the sun go down, but if I didn't get high, I felt like I wasn't going to capture the moment.
Experience.
Yeah, experience, not just the experience, but it was poetic, you know, like you really felt like you were connecting with the entire universe and everything made sense, and your role in that moment made sense. And that's what really drugs allow you to do, is they allow you to become so present within yourself that you experience complete bliss. And that's what you chase. And what you don't realize is that after each time you take it, the experience depletes, and it depletes. So you spend more time trying to achieve that same experience, and you're chasing a high that you'll never be able to get again. So then you try something else. You'll try a different drug, and you'll experience it with that different drug in a different way. And then you'll spend the rest of your time trying to achieve that. And while you're trying to achieve those moments, your body is creating a dependency. Your mind is creating a dependency. And so, you know, we're here in Langata, and I grew up in Langata. You know, I came from a really, really good family, and for all intents and purposes, I had everything provided for me. I went to, you know, really, really great schools, grew up in great neighborhoods, had great friends, and so, you know, I had a lot of time to explore these avenues, because we had the time where on an afternoon we would just go to, you know, the national park, and we would just go and watch animals, and we would drink, and we would smoke marijuana and everything like that, which at the time, you know, and it's still to a certain degree was completely harmless, because for other people it may not have meant to them what that meant to me. And so I became obsessed with chasing every single moment like that. And then I became obsessed with making sure I didn't miss a single party, because if I missed a single party, I might miss a moment that I needed to be able to capture in time. Yep. And I was the only person that was going to be able to capture that moment. And the one day that my parents didn't let me go out or whatever, my friends would come back and be like, man, it was the best night. You missed a night, birthday, you know. And I was like, I knew it, you know, and I would punish myself. Yeah. So my social environment and my need to create these epic experiences pretty much then superseded everything else in my environment. And then, you know, life happens along the way, and then you feel as though the only place that you can go to stay safe is the environment that you've created for yourself in your addiction.
Which is now the drugs.
Yeah. I mean, the drugs is really a small part of it. It's the mind. It's your mind that changes, because for once, and I know in my experience, there was moments where I felt completely out of control, right? I felt, you know, I'm going to school, I have to get these grades, and then I have to go to university, and then I have to get this job, and then I'm probably going to have kids and live in the right neighborhood or anything like this. And then I felt like my life had already been planned out for me, that there was nothing that I could do to escape that, you know? Yeah. And so when I'd get into my drugs, it was something that I had control of, and it was mine, and nobody could touch it. And if you tried to touch it, oh boy.
Nandi, your conversation is so intense.
You know?
Like, you know, if the number of times I interrupt people when they're talking, like, I'm just like, what am I supposed to say? Okay, so that's very interesting, because at least it shows, like, that's where probably you started chasing those moments the way you're saying. Like, it was just from, like, a young teen, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then how did you end up in the States?
So I ended up in the States because I joined the U.S. military. And so that's what took me to the States. Yep. And I didn't actually see it as an opportunity to change my ways or anything like that. I really...
Is that what you wanted to pursue career-wise?
No, it wasn't. It was more a situation of what needed to happen at the time for me and for the family economically.
Okay.
So for me, it was an opportunity to be able to go to school, to be able to have healthcare for the rest of my life and everything like that. But I didn't see it as that.
Okay.
I honestly saw it as a punishment. And so when I looked at it as a punishment and I was a victim of my situation, I reacted to it by going to the only place that I knew that was safe, which was my drugs and my alcohol situation. Like, I was not in a position to recognize the opportunity that my parents were trying to create for me by sending me to the U.S. military, which most people would die for the opportunity to go, but
not me. Not me.
Well, if you consider that you would get like U.S. citizenship, you'd get university fees paid for, you'd have healthcare paid for by the U.S. government for the rest of your life.
Well, if you put it that way. Yeah. Okay, yeah, no, I understand. I understand. Yeah.
You understand those things, but at the same time, is it worth the sacrifice? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a case of a balance.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe that for me personally, those weren't, despite the fact that I'm really benefiting from that now.
Yeah.
Like, my university education is paid for, my health is paid for, all of those sorts of things.
For life?
My university education is, my bachelor's degree is paid for by the U.S. military, and I have free healthcare from the Veterans Association for the rest of my life. And now I'm a U.S. citizen.
Well, now, okay, when you joined the military, I'm just asking from like an observer point of view, because I don't have friends in the U.S. military and everything. When you join, does that mean you have to go to what do they call it?
War?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, if your unit gets orders, you do have to deploy. It's part of
deployment, right?
Yeah,
Did you ever go to...
No, I didn't. I was very fortunate, actually, that I didn't get deployed.
Okay, so, because for most vets, I guess they get into drugs, especially after the whole deployment process and everything, and they come back home. That's when they definitely get hooked and everything. But at what point, because from the video that I saw, how you were talking about ending up in, was it the Las Vegas trip or was it in LA or? I want to know how you got to that, because I'm guessing when you were in Kenya, if it's in Kenya, I'm just guessing the drugs that most that teens do is just
marijuana.
Yeah, just like weed. Because now if we talk about things like crystal meth, heroin and cocaine, I wouldn't know where to get that. Innocent me, I wouldn't know. If you put a gun in my head and you ask me like, yo, I need this or else.
Talk to me after the show.
Oh no. So yeah, how did you start getting hooked into that? Because I just want to know how you ended up, like, was it during like your recreational activities, when on your off time in the States, or how exactly did you end up with the hard stuff?
I started partying at a very early age, and when I say partying, I was, out and, till 6 a.m. or whatever, and, started doing drugs like cocaine and everything.
In Kenya?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's very, very active on the social scene. And you're not exposed to it, but
I am. That's the thing, and I think even at times
I literally don't even know how, honestly, because where I was, it was everywhere.
I always get told this, like, you know what? Don't you notice guys are not buying alcohol, like, but people seem like they're really high. I'm like, what are they taking? Where are they getting it from?
Or they're talking a lot.
Oh yeah, or they're talking a lot. They're really super hyped.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, is it really that good?
You know what? I think it's about that moment of presence, being engaged in someone or in something so you're so focused on them that you get a feeling of elation, a feeling of highness, and you're all there together in that one space. And so, yeah, it really does create a euphoric feeling inside of your brain.
Don't make me try.
I'm not going to make you try. I'm just trying to state the fact.
How you can easily get.
Yeah, and the thing is that we're so distracted in our society so much of the time that kids are pushed so hard at school and everything like that. And I'm not saying that it's an excuse, but what will happen is people will look for an outlet, or they'll look for a way to feel connected because they feel disconnected, even though they're engaging with their friends and everything like that. They feel disconnected to the grand scheme of life, like their actual purpose and why they're here, and why, people say that we're the only planet in the whole galaxy that has life or something, and we were created, or either we were created by some sort of creator, and the question becomes why, if we're the only ones and we can't get out of our solar system or everything, like why? You're telling me that God created all of this just for me to do this? Absolutely not. But when you take the drugs, you're like, aha, now I understand. You see? And so that, it's not just the connection to yourself or whatever, it's the connection to life itself, like the moving energy, the entity that is in all things. And I can't really try to explain it much better than that.
I guess there's only one way to find out. No.
You're making it sound like I'm romanticizing it.
No. But I'm just saying, but it is now from how you're explaining it, I understand. I can like paint a picture of the feeling, because I can see it in your eyes. It's definitely happiness. There's some sort of happiness that you find from that. And so, so it's a habit that started here before you even joined.
I would say the habit, I was exposed to it.
Early.
Early. The habit formed when I felt as though my life, it felt as though that I needed to react to life with drugs. So does that make sense? So it wasn't necessarily my life that caused the situation, but it was my reaction to life that caused the situation. So that's why I really put so much emphasis on emotional intelligence and everything like that, because what you see with a lot of veterans and everything, when we were going through basic training, there is very, very, very little focus on mental health, emotional intelligence, because you get psyched up in basic training to go to war, right? And they're the enemy, you are the good guy, right? And so at the same time, you will never conceive that a child might be carrying a bomb, and you have to eliminate the child. And you may not even know if the child is carrying a bomb or not, but that is what you're being told by your superiors. And so in that situation, can you disobey a direct order if there is the possibility that that individual is going to cause an abundance of harm? So what you get, and what I got with a lot of my friends, was that they came back from Iraq or Afghanistan completely damaged because they had absolutely no way of preparing for war. And that's the thing, is that in the military, you can volunteer for the military in the United States at the age of 17. As a 17-year-old child, because that's what you are, you were handed a weapon of destruction, and you are sent into a war zone, and you can effectively take lives. And there, don't get me wrong, there are processes in place to make sure that that you used appropriate force or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But the point is that I don't believe as human beings at that age you are designed
ready to process that
kind of trauma, and the system is not necessarily designed to help you recover fully from that. It's designed to be there, but it's not designed to help you to fully recover
the aftermath
from that aftermath in the way that truly needs to happen. So what ends up happening, and what I've seen with so many of my friends, is that a form of insanity takes on, or they hide in their drugs, or they hide in their alcohol, because it's the safest place for them to be emotionally and mentally. And people look down on that. And the thing is that unless you've been there in your mind and in your body, where your environment becomes hostile, and then your body becomes hostile because your body is reacting to your emotional state. So you're feeling pain, or you're feeling anxiety, or you're feeling paranoid. And so you have to dull that out, otherwise you'll go insane. And then the voices start in your mind as well, telling you things, and then you're completely you're in a war zone in your own body, and it's the most terrifying feeling in the world.
Hey, man, this is too intense for me. I wasn't ready, Nandi. I wasn't ready. I was just waking up innocently thinking I'm coming to shoot another podcast. Do you need some honey for that?
No, this is good, actually.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to keep sugar down.
Okay, thanks. So, what would make somebody, like, let's say, if you're just taking like one drug, switch to another drug, especially if you already know like this is like the hardcore stuff and like the repercussions? Does that cross your mind when you're switching like from one to the next?
So in my case,
because trust me, like, to me, this is all amusing, by the way, because I do not, like I was telling you behind the camera, like, I don't see how it's possible to get addicted to anything.
Yeah.
I don't understand how it is, especially if, like, let's say I've seen like a documentary of, someone who's on heroin or crystal meth. First of all, like, I mean, there's no way in hell you'd convince me to do it, just because of their stories, just because of what I've seen from the victims of how can I call them?
I mean, you can call them victims.
Yeah, of people who've just used from the news and everything. So what would make you switch from one to the other? Because, like, to you, I'm just guessing, is there anything that you didn't particularly touch?
Like PCP.
Oh, that's crazy. Okay, now that there's no way. You'd have to kill me before you make me try PCP. PCP. Okay, that's on the extreme though. Yeah, for sure.
That is literally probably the only thing. It's not that it scared me. It just never came into my possession.
Really?
It never came in my direction.
If it came in a direction, you'd
most likely, yes.
What?
Yeah, I know myself. Yes.
Okay, that's first of all too much for me. But I want you to paint a picture of the story that you were talking about in LA that made you rethink about just drugs, or maybe it triggered something.
What, in Vegas?
Was it Vegas?
Las Vegas?
And somebody was taking a shit next to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was in Las Vegas.
Okay, yeah. We need to talk about that. Was it at the Strip or?
Yeah, it was It was at the end of the Strip, right?
Okay.
The old Strip.
Okay, hold that thought. Because that caught my attention. I think that's the first thing I always like scroll through videos and try to find out what's interesting in what I'm watching, and I was like, what? Okay, now you got my attention. Let me listen to this. So yeah, just for the people who haven't seen that video, can you just paint a picture or just talk about that incident? Is it the incident that made you like think like this is like the lowest place that, you know?
It was a whole host of events that happened in Las Vegas, it had started to happen before, because I was actually homeless in Boston, and
my apologies. Okay, yeah, please.
Yeah,
I will not interrupt. Yes.
I had lied to my landlord about being able to pay her, because I was I stopped showing up for school because I was enrolled at Harvard Extension School.
What?
Yeah, I was enrolled in Harvard, and I couldn't stop drinking and using. So, I would come to class, but I couldn't go into class because I was so embarrassed because I was drunk, And I had a loved one, a boyfriend, and we were going to, we talked about getting married and everything like that. And he had died a few weeks beforehand. And so I tried to get on with my life or whatever, and I couldn't do it. So I was supposed to be going to classes at Harvard, and my family had really supported me trying to start this new life, and I genuinely wanted to do really, really well in it, but I could not stop drinking and I could not stop using drugs. And I would even go to bars and tell them not to let me in, 'cause
the next time I come, please.
Yeah, please do not let me in. But obviously I would always talk my way into the bar, right? And so I was just stealing from people. I'd stolen from my family. I had lied to my landlady. I was stealing from my landlady as well. She had like that rice wine because she was Chinese. She had that rice wine, Yeah. So she used it for cooking, but me, I needed to use it for drinking. Wow. And like, I didn't know how much to gauge that I could drink so that she wouldn't notice that it had gone down. And she was like 97 years old, Yeah. But that's I had no shame. Like, I was just stealing from a 97-year-old woman. And so eventually the new place that I found to live, I wasn't paying rent there, and I was making up excuses as to why I couldn't pay rent there. So eventually...
But you're still getting money, right?
No, because because in the military, when they're paying for school, you have to be enrolled in school in order to get money. But I flunked out of my courses at Harvard. So the money stopped coming, but I kept saying that it was coming. And then eventually they caught on to the fact that I was lying and that I was stealing. And so I ended up in the streets, right? And so, what's it called? I'd walk the streets of Boston all night, or I'd go to the park and everything like that, where I met, a person who's still my friend to this day, actually. Her name is Patty, and she was like, well, I was like, I've got nothing going for me here. I really need to, I think I just need to get out. And I'd been on the street probably at this point for about, I would say maybe 5 weeks or something like that.
Where do you sleep?
You just, I would go to bars and I would just talk to people, and then I would, say, oh, can I sleep on, a couch or something like that? And some people would say yes, or sometimes I would overstay my welcome, and then they'd say you have to go or whatever. So I'd go to another bar, and I would just try doing it that way. Like, that was how little I was able to gauge, the appropriateness of my situation, or, and I would try to find jobs. I would try to work, I really would, but I would either find jobs that weren't paying immediately, or, or I would try and stay with some of the people that I was working with, and, in their home, but I wasn't contributing in any way, and stuff like that. So, eventually when we... this is how I got to Las Vegas, and she was going off to Burning Man, and she was going off to Burning Man, and I was left in Las Vegas, and I was like, don't worry, everything will be fine. And it really wasn't. Everything, I'd lost all of my identification. I'd lost, so basically I was walking around Las Vegas, I was walking around this city with no identification whatsoever. So if anybody took me or anything happened to me, there would be no way of tracing me. Yeah. And so one time I remember I was trying to find something to eat, and I don't know if I mentioned it in the Engage talk, but I was at the Hard Rock Cafe Casino, and there's cameras everywhere in Las Vegas, but I just wanted something to eat. I hadn't eaten in days because I'd been taking a lot of crystal meth, and I needed to eat because I needed to take more drugs, right? But my body was eating itself, basically, is what happens. And I stole some salami out of the shop in the Hard Rock Cafe, and I ran down the street as quickly as I could, and I got underneath a bush and I wrapped myself around the bush, and then I ate like 3 pieces of salami, and then I dug a hole and buried it, and then walked away because I was that paranoid. I was that crazy inside my mind. Like, I was that paranoid that I was going to get caught and whatever. And so then I went and I walked around the block, made sure no one was following me, and then I came back under the bush, dug up my salami and started eating it again. And then I slept under that bush, and then, the next day I was walking the streets to talk to someone else, and they were like, hey, I've got some drugs. And I was like, okay, cool. So then we went to that person's house, and then in that person's house, we're smoking drugs, and then there's, someone beats down the door, and they're like, where's my money, right? And I'm like, oh my goodness, this person's going to get... So my first thought is like, save the drugs. So I grabbed the drugs, and then I opened the window and I jumped out of the window. Luckily, we were only on like the first or the second floor. I can't remember where. Yeah. But then, I ran away, but I was so happy because I had the drugs,
Do I need to ask which drugs they were?
Crystal meth,
That's the worst. My God.
But, that was, I just needed, I needed to protect that. So this went on for about a week. And then I ended up at the women's shelter. And this is what was so crazy, was because, I had, my English accent and everything like that. And Americans kind of found that, exotic. So I would go to bars and stuff, and I would just put on my best, English schoolgirl accent and everything. People would be like, where are you from? And I was like, oh, I'm from Kenya, and I went to these schools and blah, 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 blah. Like, so completely delusional, because all I really wanted out of that situation was I wanted a safe place to be able to drink and take drugs. And it didn't matter what I did. It didn't matter who I slept with. It didn't matter. It didn't matter because I wanted to get high. And I needed to be with people that were going to facilitate that. So I used the drugs. I used everything at my disposal to be able to create that situation. And, Las Vegas is that kind of, it can either be like the city where you go and see concerts and you go and watch Celine Dion or Britney Spears, or you're in the underbelly of the city, and in Las Vegas, you can't even get a glass of water without an ID.
What?
Yes. Yani, you have to prove that you were over the age of, I think it's 18, to be able to ask for a glass of water, and it's in the desert. So if you're homeless with no identification, you can't even get water.
Okay, that's crazy. It's
crazy, right?
Yeah.
So when I went to the women's shelter, because I was exhausting all of my options here, because that was when the woman on the street came next to me, and she she's just wearing a baggy t-shirt, like a long baggy t-shirt, and she's got hair shaved like me and everything, and she pulls up her shirt and she sits next to me, and she squats and she starts taking a dump. And I looked at her, because in my delusional mind, you know, I'm still like the prissy, like, you know, good little schoolgirl that went to boarding school and everything like that. And the look on my face is one of horror and entitlement and just like, ew, what's wrong with you? And the look on her face, and I don't know if this was just, you know, a reflection from, you know, my God or whatever the thing was, but the reflection was clearly, who do you think you are? Where do you think you are, by the way? Look at where you are. And I realized in that moment that I was completely delusional. Like I was so far off the reservation of the reality of my situation that I didn't pick up on how I had allowed myself to fall so far from everything that had presented me with opportunity in my life. And the thing is I don't actually think I was in a position to accept or to really take advantage of any of the opportunity in my life, because I didn't know how, to be honest. And it wasn't that I wasn't told, or it wasn't that I wasn't told I should, you know, about the great things that I had in my life. I had no concept of truly earning a wage, or truly appreciating what it took to be able to live and grow up in the neighborhoods that I grew up in, or the schools that I was able to go to. I never truly had a concept of what it meant to be able to accumulate wealth and keep it. I thought I was owed it.
Wow.
And that was the big difference. And so I held on to that idea even into the streets of Las Vegas, that I was still that girl. And I wasn't. I was a homeless person, a drug addict, that the people who were actually in my old position didn't even see. Just like the way you don't see a chokora on the side of the street that's coming to knock on your window and he asks you for money and you say, "Not today, Baba," or you don't even look at them. Or the guys selling jugus on the side of the street and you don't even look at them. You don't even acknowledge them to say, "Apana Santi," like not today.
Taking your time and just
just to have that human connection, just to say no thanks. I wasn't even the jugu guy. Like I wasn't seen. I had completely disappeared from you and I, you know, as we're sitting here today. I disappeared from that site. So I realized in that moment that despite the fact that I thought that I was that girl, nobody else saw me as that girl. In fact, they didn't see me at all. And that was a horrible realization.
I can only imagine. And I mean, you're just leaving me speechless every time you finish your sentences. Okay. My next question would be like, just how did you like bounce back? Because I don't see, once somebody touches like, you know, heroin, crystal meth, like there's no coming back from that. And like just looking at you like right now, you look like really healthy, well spoken, well composed. I mean, how did you just manage to bounce back?
I wouldn't call it a bounce.
Okay, it's not bouncing. Wrong choice of words.
I didn't like bounce back.
How did you just manage? Because like I'm just seeing that as like point of no return. How do you recover from that?
So this is what happened. So outside the women's shelter, when that happened to me, I was like, okay, man, something's got to change, you know. And then you're not going to believe this, but this is true story. I kid you not. So there was a lady who is now sitting on the side of the street, and she's cooking chicken on the side of the street there, you know, and the Luya in me was like, hey, So, she's like, what's up, baby? And I'm like, hi. And she's like, you want some chicken? And I'm like, yes. I want some chicken. Of course I did. I was starving, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, she was this lovely 75-year-old lady. And she offered me a place to stay while the women's shelter freed up a bed, because they have beds there, but you have to get on a waiting list, and then they buy you a ticket out of the state. That's what they try to do with the homeless people in Las Vegas, is they try to send them to a different state.
Oh, yeah.
But they'll only send you there if someone's picking you up on the other side, if someone can confirm to the shelter that you're being picked up on the other side. So I could confirm that I was being picked up on the other side in Utah, where I was going to go next. But I had to wait 10 days to get a bed in the women's shelter, right?
Yeah.
So I went to this lady, and she offered me a couch and everything like that to sleep on. And I couldn't believe how gracious she was being. It was so lovely. And she was like, you should meet my nephew. He's so great. He's lovely. And yeah, I met her nephew and everything like that. And again, crystal meth.
Come on.
Drug of
Come on.
He did
so the nephew wasn't any good?
You will not believe this, but he was, what I found out later is that he was actually a pimp. So what they do is they post lovely old ladies outside the women's shelter, and they cook food. And because they know that when you're at the women's shelter, you're basically at the end of your rope, right?
Oh.
So
these
ladies essentially recruit you, right?
Oh,
so they lull you into a false sense of security. They feed you, they treat you really nice, and everything like that. And then she calls her nephew, and he suggests, if you're looking for money, there's quite a quick way to do it.
Don't tell me you were pimped out.
I wasn't.
Oh.
Luckily.
Thank God.
I swear to God, I don't know why.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything, and it was the next easiest choice. And that's why I have so much compassion and understanding for women that go that place, because there are just some places of or men even who go to that place, because there are some places of desperation where you go to where your body seems like the last, like it is not as important as it is to eat or to get high or whatever the case may be. It's a very easy thing to give away. And so we would walk up and down and he would show me, he would say like, look, if I stand on this side of you, people will think that you're available for working, but if I stand on that side of you, they won't think that you're available for walking. And many times, like, he'd stand on this side of me, and a car would pull up, and they'd roll down the window, and they would ask if I was working, and he would just ask me very nicely, like, do you want to? And I would say, no, I don't want to. And he'd go like this, and the car would drive away. And that would happen several times in an evening, right? And so
I bet
time after time
I'm sorry.
Time after time, I had these opportunities to be able to do it. And then I thought, I can't do that. Maybe I should just go to a strip club, right? Maybe I can serve drinks at a strip club or something like that. And so I went to strip clubs looking for work. And they'd ask me if I was able to dance, and I would say no, I can serve, and I didn't have identification. So whether that was, God's a blessing in disguise, I don't know. So then I remember I would stand on a highway with a sign.
You did the signboard thing?
Yes.
What? That's what I'm saying. Like, even rappers are not as hardcore as you are.
I did the signboard thing, and I had my sign saying I was trying to get to Utah, and people would stop. They would say, I can give you money, but you'll have to perform a service. Truckers truckers would stop, or regular cars would stop, or even just people walking by. They would just ask me. They'd be like, hey, I'll give you $80. And, $80 would be more than enough to get me to where I needed to go, but I'd have to perform a certain service for that to happen. And I would just say no, And so eventually what happened was the other girls in the same situation that I was, they realized that I wasn't there for that. You know, they genuinely realized that I wasn't there for that. And so they hooked me up with this other really lovely lady, and she hid me in her apartment, bought me a ticket on the Greyhound, and called her nephew over from the Air Force Base, who snuck me out in his car, took me to the Greyhound station. Took me to the bus station, where I caught the bus to go to the Greyhound station. Now, I started running. I was running so fast because I didn't want these guys to catch me. Because when I realized what they wanted from me, I lost it. And I started screaming, and I started hitting the guy. And I was like, you told me that I was your daughter's age. Like, you were about to let me do all of these things, and I'm the same age as your daughter. What is wrong with you? Would you let your daughter do this? And I was crying and streaming and everything like that. And these girls, they said, we don't even know why he didn't kill you. If any of us had spoken to him that way, he would have, he would have beat us. And so they helped me there. And when I got to the Greyhound station, oh my God, the bus had broken down. So I'm there, crouched in the back of the bus, crying, and I'm doing my foxhole prayer, right? And I'm saying, I'm like, if you are out there, please just get me out of this situation. And I cried myself to sleep in a little ball at the back of the bus, and then I woke up to the sound of the engine, and I didn't even dare look out of the window in case they were at the Greyhound station looking for me. And I finally reared my head up out of the window when I got out of Las Vegas City, and I was so petrified. And I think from that moment, when I got to Utah, I went to a motel, and I met a little lady, Chinese lady, who owned a motel in Utah. And I said to her, you don't have to pay me, but I'll make your beds. I'll make the beds in your home motel if you'll give me a place to sleep. And she said, okay. And so she gave me a little room with a bed, and every day, me and this other couple, they taught me how to make beds, and I made beds, and I vacuumed, and I cleaned bathrooms. And I did that for a week, and then she gave me $20. And then the following week, she gave me $40. And I hadn't stopped drinking or using at that point, but I was starting to pick myself up.
It's kind of in control a bit.
Yeah, a little bit more. And then eventually I made my way I saved up enough money to make my way to Colorado. And when I got to Colorado, I still continued drinking and using and everything like that. But I started to realize that this was truly what was getting in the way of me being able to be successful. And I started working at a Montessori school in Vail, Colorado. And like I mentioned in the Engage talk, one of the children told me that they loved me. And I couldn't believe it, because up until that point, I'd had difficulty just looking in the mirror, because I hated myself so much. I hated the person that I had become. I hated the daughter that I was. I hated the sister that I was. I hated all of these things about me. And this little kid told me that they loved me. And
who's even the last person who said that to you? I'm trying to imagine, throughout this whole horrible experience.
You know what? My family still said it to me, but I didn't believe it, because I didn't believe that I was worth it. And I felt like I had done so much damage that they were just saying it because they had to. I didn't understand the kind of love that they had for me. And so when that happened, I realized that I needed to show up for those kids, because they had no reason to love me. They weren't related to me, but they loved me anyway. There was something that I was doing right, and I realized that I needed help. And help came. It came, and I met people that helped me I met people who had been in the same situation that I had, and slowly but surely I started the process of getting sober, and that was almost more difficult
I can imagine.
than all of that, because you are so, you've never experienced emotions or frustrations, and it's huge highs and huge lows, and the voices in your head are screaming at you just to like put them out of their misery, put them out of pain, and just use again, drink again, or use again, do something again. And you know that if you use again, you'll lose everything forever, or you'll die, and you don't know how to keep going forward, so you keep clinging onto these people that have been through the process. And I would scream at them, and they would tell me, stick around, we'll love you till you learn to love yourself. And I was like, I hate all of you. You're all happy and smiley, and you're all just full of shit, and I hate you so much. And they were like, okay, we'll see you again tomorrow. And I'm like,
why?
Just screaming.
Yeah.
But eventually, if you can't, unless you know that to go back is to die, and to go forward, you have to have faith in something that you don't understand. Until you're at that point of humility and surrender, sobriety is not really an option. And so for people that are trying to get people off of drugs or alcohol, nothing will get them off until they're at that point.
They have to see it and actually decide in their head that they actually want to.
Yeah.
How long would you say it took you to?
3 years.
3 years.
It took me 3 years from the point in Las Vegas to the point where I couldn't do it anymore.
And now you're squeaky clean.
I wouldn't say squeaky clean.
Oh no.
No, as in like from what I was from what I was using, and from alcohol, yes, but in my mind it's a daily
battle
it's a daily battle, and it's not a bad battle. Some days are better than others, but the disease, the addiction takes on very many forms, and whether it comes in self-hate, whether it comes in selfishness, or perceived thoughts of grandeur or entitlement, it takes very many forms. And so you have to stay vigilant, and you have to get help. You do have to get help, and you have to keep your mind focused. You have to keep your mind focused, and you can only focus on it one day at a time, otherwise it'll drive you insane.
Wow. Another very stupid question.
No such thing.
You sure?
Yeah.
Did you deal with like just the withdrawal thing that
Yes.
I see people like,
Yeah.
I just see that in the movies.
No, withdrawal is a very real thing, and it's a very serious thing, and it's actually tends to be what keeps people going, is that you get afraid of the withdrawal because it hurts your body. It hurts so much. My withdrawal from heroin was, you sweat, you get uncontrollable diarrhea, you vomit, your body hurts, it aches, you tremble. It's a very, very excruciating experience, and most of the time you spend a lot of time making sure that you don't get sick because it's so painful. So you'll do anything to get high so that you won't get sick, basically. It's extremely physically painful. The withdrawals from alcohol are very, very painful as well. They can kill you. Same thing from withdrawals from crystal meth. They're all very, very painful experiences. Your body becomes so accustomed to having those things that it literally, it feels like it's killing you when you're coming off of those drugs. So it's no joke when people are trying not to get sick. people should understand that the lengths you'll go to make sure that you don't go through that pain are significant. So when people say, I don't understand why they would steal, or I don't understand their family has done so much for them, or whatever the case may be, is that you're not in a position to conceptualize any of that because you're in so much pain, or you're trying to avoid being in that much pain.
In that much pain again.
Yeah.
So another very... You said there's no such things as stupid questions.
No, there's not.
Okay. Because I'm sure...
Yeah, that's fine.
No, just leave it. Yeah,
that's fine. Thank you.
So, how do you take... Listen, and people might say I'm black and slow, but listen, I'm going to ask these questions. How do you consume... I know cocaine is sniffed, right?
You can be sniffed. It can also be smoked.
You can smoke cocaine?
Yes. You can bang cocaine as well, which is intravenous.
What is it called?
Well, banging is like when you bang it is,
or like you
inject it, or you can smoke it, you can snort it. Yep. The most common way is snorting.
So what would be the alternative to going to all these to these different methods? You get higher faster, or it's more intense, or something?
Yeah, it just might be a different high. It might be a high that suits you better, or you might have eroded away your nasal cavity, so you can't snort anymore, so you have to use a different method. So even when you're shooting heroin, sometimes your veins collapse in one arm, like you can't use those veins anymore, so you'll go to another arm, or maybe you have to make sure that people at work can't see the bruises, so you'll shoot through your feet. Men sometimes shoot through their genitalia.
Oh, hell no. Hell no.
I've seen it. I've seen it happen, man. I'm not even kidding.
I hope I don't get to live to see that, man. But how were you doing it? These questions are just, I know they're just a bit...
No, it's totally fine.
But you okay? You okay talking about it?
Yeah. I was doing it through both of my arms.
Yeah.
They were quite bruised and everything, but now you can barely.
You're good. You've been a good girl.
You can barely say it.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's that I've been a good girl. I just honestly think I was just blessed. Like, you know, I can't explain it other than, you know, it's like it was a miracle. But even when I was snorting cocaine, it took a really long time for my nasal cavity to be okay again. I think that there are some things that change inside you chemically, especially when you're shooting stuff into your bloodstream straight in there. Yeah. It does stuff to the chemicals in your brain. And sometimes I feel as though my ability to regulate my body temperature is a bit off. It's not what it used to be. But considering everything that I've been through, I'm not ignorant of the fact that I'm pretty blessed to be looking and acting the way that I am today. I think that it's so important. Our bodies are such incredible machines, you know? Yeah. They have the ability to consistently heal us and to adapt to what we're doing, which is why I think, you know, they're such sacred vessels, you know? If you ever get the ability or the foresight to truly appreciate what a fantastic machine, you know, biological machine your body is, that it to me it's just incredible what your body is capable of doing without you even asking it to. You know?
Wow. I think we've just had like enough conversation about drugs, first of all. I've never been educated so much about so many things. But somebody who's gone like through it and they're actually like just now making that step to actually go out and try and educate
Mm-hmm.
and just make sure that people understand what addiction is, like
Mm-hmm.
you've said. So, I mean, just stepping away from that, because I think that's been, first of all, it's just too hardcore for me. It's like, those movies that you're told, like, viewers discretion advised. Yeah. That's what this podcast has been to me. And I'd just like to know, like, how you're dealing, like, right now with just your friends and family since you've, moved from that place or space. How are people, like, how are people treating you? Do you have a boyfriend right now?
Yes, I do.
Actually, that's where I was just going anyway. That's where I was just going. And, are there good support system to you? How does that, like, help you as a person in, like, your growth and journey right now? Both family and just, like, your significant other.
I think that it's important to know that addiction treats everybody differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my experience isn't necessarily my family's experience. A lot of the time, your family will feel alienated, exasperated because, they're the closest ones to you, so you tend to treat them the worst. And so it's important to appreciate that everybody heals in different ways, right? So I have a comfortability around talking about it and being open and everything like that because I feel like it's a necessity. And, for some people, whether it's friends that I've damaged, friendships that I've damaged, family relationships that I've damaged, there's still a lot of healing that needs to go into that as well.
Yeah.
The best thing that I feel that I can do at this point is acknowledge the pain that I've caused, acknowledge that I'm lucky to be here, and try to be a living amends to the people that have died, that I've come into contact with along the way, and the people that I've hurt and I'm trying to rebuild relationships with. But for the most part, my family is extremely supportive, and I think that for them, it's important for me to start discussing because we're still a Kenyan family at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so what's been very difficult is to gauge how much information do we tell people, how is it going to reflect or whatever. And the thing is that they say addiction is a family disease, right? Because it affects everybody. Not necessarily that everybody's an addict, but everybody gets affected.
Yeah.
So, and we all respond to it in different ways. So for me, with the work that I've done around it, I see it as my experience. I went through it because it's supposed to help other people. So I go and talk about it, and I try to be as vocal and as open and as raw as possible so that if other people are going through the same thing and perhaps don't want to talk about it, they can understand the importance of having to talk about it, because the person that they love, their life could be in danger. And you need to be able to understand that nothing, no social circumstance, no reputation, nothing is more important than saving a life. Nothing is more important than saving a life. And so that's why I'm so open about the things that I did, the damage that I've caused, the people I stole from, being arrested, whatever the case may be. I'm so open about it because I want people to understand the lengths that an addict is willing to go through. And I'm not saying doesn't want to go to, is willing to go, willing to go to be able to accomplish a completely selfish act, but what seems like a completely necessary act at the time.
Yeah.
So, as far as, what partners or spouses can do to be supportive is don't, I would say in my experience, it's been not putting your partner in a situation where they are susceptible to a relapse, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, when I'm ready to go home, I go home. If I'm out and I'm dancing and everything like that, and I'm starting to look at drinks a little bit too long or anything, or I'm starting to enjoy the smell of marijuana a little bit too much, I call myself a taxi and I'm out of there.
Yeah.
Or if a partner comes home and they smell of alcohol or something, have to sleep in the other room. Something like that, because
don't that trigger?
It triggers, yeah, and I'll start salivating.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that serious?
It's that serious. I'll start salivating. Jeez. Even if I'm if I'm driving through one of the slums or anything like that, or I see someone who's high of heroin, or even if I'm looking at you and you have your shirt rolled up and your veins are out, I'll want to stick your veins with heroin. I'll want to inject you.
Oh, because it just looks like...
Yeah, because it's so tempting to me.
You know the craziest thing?
What?
I'm such a veiny person.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're wearing a long
today I wore this.
Thank you.
God.
I really appreciate it.
It's a trigger.
It's a trigger.
Oh my goodness.
It's a trigger.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's it's so important to also understand, like, just...
And also, sorry to interrupt you, but it's okay. So, because I've seen it happen so much, is when people are like, but you haven't taken anything, you've been sober now for 4 years, it's fine, just take a drink. It's not fine. Yeah. Don't say that. It is not supportive. They can't do it. And the thing is that they want to believe you. We want to believe you. We want to believe that we have control of it. Yeah. We want to believe that we can only take one drink. We can just take one toke. We can just have one, but we can't. There's that saying, I'm one drink away from a drunk. You start with one drink, but you won't finish, and you'll wake up 6 months later and you won't have any idea what happened to your life.
Now if you go out right now, you don't drink?
No.
Wow.
And I can go out to 4 o'clock in the morning, and my friends who are drinking and everything, they're ready to go home. Oh, I'm feeling tired, and I'm still like...
But now, that's the thing. When you're not drinking and you're at a party, everybody else always looks crazy, because they're like, why are these people just so out of control? You know
what? At this point...
How do you look at them?
I look at it as though I understand when the conversation starts to deteriorate.
Oh.
When people start to get too close to me because they're leaning in.
I'm telling you.
I'm telling you. They're repeating the same thing over and over, and then they're spitting in your face, their breath smells, and then for me, I'm like, you know what? I'm out. Peace. Yeah. And then the thing is that I can still go to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'll wake up at 8, 9, I'm feeling fresh, I'm feeling good, and I'm ready to go. Yeah. And, the appointment that we set last night to go and meet somewhere, and then I call my, hello. Oh, I can't make it. And I'm like, sour. Now another hour's opened up in my day. I can go to, the giraffe center, just do my thing. And that's I'm free today. And I wasn't free before, I would walk past a liquor store or something, and those abunjo.
Oh, and,
it's crazy. I don't even hear it. It's like more like I look at it and I'm good, and I can just walk past. But some days when I have those bad days and I just want to go home and just smoke a joint, or like go home and just have a glass of wine, and the feeling is so strong, But thank goodness I have tools today. And, I've been taught those tools in my recovery, by counselors and everything like that. So that aspect, sobriety is so hard, but it's so rewarding if you're willing to work for it.
Oh, I can see it like just in here. That's just an. And speaking of wine, it's Nairobi Wine Weekend. I've been just promoting it down my timeline every single day. So just stay out of my timeline till next week.
It's fine. It's fine. You know, because for me, people will be like, oh, this is a nice wine and it's fruity or whatever. And I'm like, who cares? Is it going to get you drunk or not? Yani, even still to this day, I'll watch people and they'll drink a glass of wine so slowly. And I'm like, why are they even drinking it?
That's the point.
It's going so slowly.
Okay.
And I'll just stare at it. And I'll be like, do you need to have some more wine? Do you need to drink that? Can I order you another glass? Because I want them to drink because it's satisfying my addiction.
Oh. Okay, then another question, because now, we've just sort of rolled back to...
Yeah, sorry.
But no, which is okay, because the conversation still evolves around that a lot. Just from that point, what would you... Because I don't know, I honestly don't know. I probably just know prices for joints. But what's a really expensive habit? Because I know all these drugs...
Cocaine.
It's expensive?
Cocaine's really expensive.
Really?
Yeah, it's like 8 Gs for...
8,000?
8,000 for a gram.
How big is a gram?
Like a gram.
No, I wouldn't know. I mean...
Like a gram.
Like this?
Yeah.
So how long would that last?
It depends on how...
To a regular consumer of if that's
a gram
habit.
would probably last, if you're taking lines, I would say maybe an hour.
1 hour?
Or people can take a gram in 2 snorts.
That's 8,000. Well, clearly I can't afford these habits. I cannot.
4 to 8,000.
No, but that's crazy. Now I understand.
So that's why I'm saying, that's why people might go to methamphetamines, or when I was doing pain pills, right? So it was always $1 per gram, right?
Okay.
So you get, per milligram.
Okay.
So if you got 20 milligrams, that was $20, right? But if you get, a gram of heroin, you're getting more bang for your buck, and the high is more intense. So it's more...
Which is how much?
So if you were... So for example, if you got a gram, which is 100... Is it 100 milligrams?
Yeah.
100 milligrams of heroin, and that would be $60. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you were paying for pain pills, for opiates, which is sort of the same, but you bought 100 milligrams of, say, Percocet or any other pain pills, you know how they talk about...
You did that too?
Yeah, that's $100. So you're saving $40 and your high is more intense. So economically, it just makes more sense. So you know how in a Future song, Mask On, Mask Off...
That's what I wanted to bring up right now. Oh my God. Future, you're just a bad influence, man.
So the combinations...
I love that song, though.
The combinations he's talking about...
Oh. That's what he means.
Yes. So the combinations he's talking about, those ones send you into oblivion. Yani.
So that's Molly?
Yeah, so if you're mixing Molly and opiates and everything like that, that is such an intense, serious... high. And you have to understand, these guys, people that live in the hood or experience mass pain as a community.
PTSD, trauma, friends being
PTSD,
shot and
friends
everything.
being shot, everything like that. It just becomes necessary. It becomes necessary to tranquilize yourself, to become disassociated with your surroundings, because as human beings, we're not designed,
Yeah.
And that's why you have to think about the system and what the system is perpetuating. And this is why Black people in America are really fighting the system, because the system allows that to happen.
Which it can easily stop.
And it's the same thing with the penal system in the United States and everything like that. And so that's why, I try to tell young people here in Kenya, be aware of the system. Pay attention to what the system is allowing you to do, how you are becoming numbed to things that are happening in the system that are allowing you to get by. Like for instance, the fact that most young people don't vote because they don't have faith in the system means that the system can get away with doing whatever it wants because nobody...
Which is why it's happening.
Which is why, and nobody keeps them accountable. And the system is very aware of the
that.
fact. Yes.
Young people will not.
Young people will not vote. Considering that in the next 10 years, something like 70% of Africa's population will be under the age of 20. We have the power, literally have the power to change the government. But as long as we're not paying attention, then they can do whatever they want.
Didn't think about it like that. I don't know. It makes sense. It makes sense. So, I mean, we've really touched on quite a lot, man. And, like, there's nothing that we can miss. You don't like biscuits?
Not with dawa.
Okay.
It doesn't.
Because I'm just saying,
for chai.
Like, what is this?
That's for chai.
Okay.
You can't put biscuit on the side of a dawa. It just doesn't make sense.
Make sure next time when they're serving you, they don't include that. That's always a bonus for you to try out. And then if you like it, you can actually go and buy like now big.
A big packet?
Yeah, a big packet, yeah. So I think we've touched on quite like almost like everything that I think I would like squeeze out of this interview. And then do you exercise or anything, or how are you taking, like you really look really healthy.
Thanks.
From like all the stories we've talked about, like you look really good. So is it diet? How do you take care of yourself?
I take care of myself. I do exercise. I ride horses, which is a lot of...
How could I forget about that? How could I forget the one thing? And I kept saying that I'm going to ask you what... So is that something that you do for recreational purposes? What is it called, first of all? What's the name?
So equestrianism.
It's called what?
Yeah, exactly.
What?
Just let's call it horse riding. But if you ride in...
Use that word again. I want to learn something.
Equestrianism.
That's...
If you are an equestrian, right, you take part in equestrian sports. Equus is the Latin word for horse. So if you're an equestrian, you ride horses.
I bet I'm not the only one who didn't know that, but now we know. Now we know. Okay, so that you do to clear your head, or is it you train people, or is it something you're good at from a young age?
I've been riding since I was 3 years old.
Oh. We have to be friends after this, you know that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've never been on a horse.
You've never been on a horse? Okay, so
we'll know which my favorite song is right now?
What?
Guess.
I don't know.
Old Town Road. You don't know that song?
I don't.
Billy Ray Cyrus and
Are you talking
Lil
about
Nas X.
country? Oh no! Are you talking about that rap song that got merged with the country song?
You don't like it?
Yeah, no, it's not that. I just haven't gone out of my way to listen to it.
I have to listen to it because, I might just come and try and do like, something with you on the horses, maybe to promote your episode. Because, but okay, let's just go back to this. Yeah. So what exactly is it that you do with? You ride horses for fun?
I ride horses for fun. I'm trying to create awareness around the sport as well. Okay. Just because horses are such fantastic animals and they really have a unique way of connecting with human beings.
Okay.
I really want the Kenyan Ministry of Sport to take notice of what equestrianism can do for the country. Eventing is the only sport in the Olympics where men and women can compete on an equal stage. But not just for those reasons. What horses are able to do for empowering human beings. This is what makes them such special creatures. Is that, and it's really with any animals that you work with. but they teach compassion, non-verbal communication, empathy, patience, because sometimes you want a horse to do something and they just don't do it. They're just not feeling it that day, and so sometimes a resort might be to beat it or to, something like that. But what you're doing, which is the same thing you're doing if you're with a child, is you're instilling fear. You're not... You're
like, if you don't do this,
yes,
these are the repercussions.
Yeah, these are the repercussions. So what I'm trying to show is that, there are lots of people that own horses in Kenya, and then there's a whole economy around horses as well. So whether it's producing feed or the care of the horses or anything like that, there's a really good opportunity for people to be empowered through horsemanship, whether it's attaining international diplomas and skills, because it's a multi-billion dollar corporate institution around the world. You can get some horses in in Europe that cost €7 million.
I've seen in those crazy auctions.
Yeah,
I've seen it in auctions. And I'm like, wow, why is a horse worth that much?
Yeah. So what is that in shillings? Is that like 70 billion or something?
That's
7 billion.
7 million
euro.
Like, oh wow. Okay, that's
euros. So that's more than dollars.
That should be.
It's got to be in the billions.
No.
Or is it not?
Oh, because you multiply by 100 first of all. Wait, could it be?
Yeah.
No, because $1 million. It's $1 million is 80 million Kenya shillings.
$1 million is 80 million Kenya shillings.
Oh,
so 7 million euro is what, about $12 million?
Yeah.
So that's almost...
Hey, listen, it's just way too much money, first of all. It's way too much money when I think about it like it's one horse, first of all. Like, should we do that?
How many cows is that?
Oh, that's crazy. Wait, should we do the math right now just for the podcast so that people can understand what we're talking about? So if we're talking about 1 million, you said euros?
Yeah.
Or 7 million euros?
7 million euro.
7 million euros, and multiply that by, how much is a euro right now?
I think it's 120.
Let's even do 120. Let's
okay.
just do an estimate,
because I know that's
right?
to the British pound,
So this horse would be
840 million, almost $1 billion shillings.
Yeah, the horse would cost 840 million Kenya shillings. Oh my goodness. If that horse gets a cold, everybody within a certain radius, somebody's getting fired, somebody's getting excommunicated from the environment. Who let this happen? Oh, but wow.
So,
like you've said, and do you think, like, even our environment, it's good for horses, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, it's good for horses. A lot of people own horses,
Wow.
but what's really important is the people that, the guys that look after the horses and everything like that, the care. Because in countries like Europe and the US, those are professions that are highly paid. Those are skills that are transferable. And like a farrier who does the shoes of the horses, they're never unemployed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a job that is in really high demand. And the thing is that now that the Kenyan economy is picking up, there are more, there's a much bigger middle class, and there are great riding schools, in Karen and in Kitisuru and everything like that. Just to get on the back of a horse, it doesn't cost a whole lot of money. How
much does it cost?
To ride for 45 minutes or something for an adult is like 1,200 baht.
Okay. Will you teach me at least how to ride a horse?
I mean, kind of.
Oh wow!
I would have to start.
Wow.
I think it's more important to start on the ground. You understand how the horse communicates, the things to look for. Before I would even put you on the back of the horse. But it's different. It's different. I have a different approach. The riding schools are really, 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 really good schools. And if you decide then you want to compete, then you go through the Horse Association of Kenya, and there are shows that happen several times a year, and they're in Gilgil, they're in Soisambu, they're in Timau, they're at Jamhuri Park, and it's a really great opportunity for people to come together and watch a really fantastic sport, and for kids to compete in something other than, generic school sports. And it keeps kids also greatly entertained, occupied during the summer, and they get to learn loss. They get to learn, when you don't win a show or you don't win a class, that's something that is really good for you to learn, because it teaches you how you can get better. And it's not just you that gets better. You and your horse have to get better together at the same time. Yeah. And it's a really unique, special relationship. There's polo, there's horse racing, there are all of these events that we can go and see and support each other as Kenyans, as a community. And if we could really come together on this and be the leading nation in Africa, because that's what the sports Ministry of Sport is looking to do, is bring tourism to Kenya. And if we can put a spotlight on equestrianism and what that can do for Kenya, because people can come for shows, but then they would also come to see the wildlife as well. And learning horse communication will also help people understand that animals have languages. We just don't think that they do, because we think that they're just dumb animals and nini and why should we protect them? But they're very, very clever, astute beings. They just communicate differently than we do. You'll never see a Maasai mistreating his animals.
Never.
Will you?
Never.
You'll never see it.
Even on the road, you see how when the cows are crossing, it's like, leave the cows alone. Let them just cross.
They treat them so well.
Yeah.
And that compassion that they have for their animals, it teaches really good human skills as well. So the children of the Maasai, they're taught compassion, care, responsibility from a very, very young age. And for the kid that grows up in the city in Nairobi, even though they don't have access to cows, they have access to horses. Yeah. And horses are the same. They're still herd animals. They still look for a leader, and they still require more of a level of respect. The Native Americans believed that if an animal or a horse could take you into war, or it could save your life, then it must have been sent from God. It must be sacred. And this is what I'm trying to reignite in African society, because Africans have been horsemen for thousands of years. Today, in northern Sudan, horses still sleep in people's homes.
Wow.
The Bedouin cultures, their wealth has been based on their horses' bloodlines for thousands of years. These creatures are absolutely phenomenal and fantastic. And I think that if we as Kenyans start to really adopt and reignite a horse culture in Kenya, we'll do fantastic things, not just for tourism or for raising the economy or empowering the people, but it will be able to show the value of the natural wealth that we already have in our country, that does come in the form of wildlife and conservation and picking up trash or whatever, And that to me is so important. I was in Nakuru National Park the other day, and I was driving around with someone, and they just threw trash outside of the car. And there's so much trash now outside in Nakuru by the lake, plastic bottles, everything like that.
Where the flamingos are usually...
So much trash. So much trash and sewage. And when I asked him to go and pick up the trash, he said, "You've been hanging around Zungus too long," right? And I said to him, and his livelihood literally depends on the national park. His livelihood literally depends on that. And so explaining to him that, like, if we chafua the game parks, then people won't come to the game parks.
Flamingos, man, might just
flamingos,
start
hippos,
being affected, even
everything. Because, because they graze inside the water, and they graze outside, and so it's it's all connected, and we really have to start appreciating that as Kenyans, because what we have here in Africa is so rare and it's so beautiful, and we're all, we're just expanding at such a massive rate that we don't realize that we're really cutting off what is naturally ours, and we really need to start appreciating that again. And a lot of,
if you think about it, so many people save for years before they actually come and experience what we just naturally have.
What we naturally have and we take for granted.
Yeah, that's true. Is this something that you've thought about doing for, like, for a living? Because like you're so passionate, and you see, look, you can break down all these things when it comes to, is it horsemanship? Like there's so much that you're talking about. Like, but is that what you're thinking of pursuing?
My main...
It would make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I'm already actively engaged in. And, you know, there are a couple of horse shows coming up. You know, there's the Horse of the Year show, there's the Tamau event and everything like that, which people used to go to in, you know, in the hundreds, but not so much anymore. But, you know, just there's going to be shows coming up at Jamhuri Park, and I really encourage people to go and see it. It is something that I'm so passionate about, and, you know, maybe I might take it on professionally, but for right now, my big thing is emotional intelligence and, you know, effective communication, because we really need to start learning to communicate effectively and to start seeing everybody in our immediate environment and non-immediate environment as people and not foreign entities, you know?
Yeah. Speaking of emotional intelligence, as we wind up on the podcast, would you... How often will you be doing this kind of, like, is it retreats or programs? How often do you plan on doing that?
So it's groups, and it's every 10 days or so, around every 10 days. And we talk about different topics, and the questions are designed to be emotive and to evoke an emotional reaction so that you can begin to observe how your body is reacting
when you're put in that situation.
When you're put in that situation, right? So, for example, if you get, you know, if your little kid smacks you, right? They smack your body.
Smack them right back.
No.
No, I'm playing. I'm joking.
No, but that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Is that as a whole adult, you think that you need to smack a small child that has maybe been on the planet for like 2 years, you know? And so it's gauging, why do you get offended by a child, right? So why do you feel that you have to act out and then act out physically to a child? And then what it's important to consider is that if you were raised being beaten or you know, by fear, then how is that affecting our leadership as a country? Because you have to remember that those guys were probably beaten, and they were probably, you know, and
it's actually very true.
It becomes a vicious cycle. So you don't see that the way that they're treating the nation is actually how they were treated in the home.
That's very true.
So
and if I think about it, it might actually be 100% what they went through when they were kids.
100% what they went through when they were kids. And so emotional intelligence, it plays into all of that. So if a politician or something decides that he's going to eliminate the enemies by either causing fear or by fear or intimidation, then there was likely someone in the household that, or in the family, that governed with fear and intimidation. And so because it worked for them, then it's something that's going to be, it's a cycle.
It's been instilled in them, and that's just the only way they know.
And so I'm not saying that it's an excuse, but I'm saying you can understand, and then you can start to demand a higher level of emotional intelligence and accountability from our leadership as a nation, as well as in your home. And so what I'm trying to create is a space where people can come and learn how to do that, so that we are trying to meet the visions for our country, you know, that the UN or the country has set, is that we won't get there if we don't work on ourselves internally, because our exterior world is a reflection of our interior world. And so when you're looking at Nairobi and you're saying there's so much trash or the air is dirty, it's because of us.
To us.
Yes.
We're the highest contribution to that.
And if we don't hold our government accountable for that, because they are public servants, we do not serve the government serves us. And we need to remember that is the dynamic. So if we hold the government accountable, right, then they have to be accountable, because if they don't have a country to run, then their jobs are obsolete.
They don't have the jobs.
Then they don't have the jobs. So it's all about empowering the people so that we can empower our leadership, so that we can become the greatest nations, and we can also set the example for the nations that are really struggling, so that we can become a united Africa once again. And it all starts with understanding our emotions and how they affect our decisions on a daily basis.
Wow, Nandi. Intense, I tell you. Okay, so as we're winding up, I just keep saying this. What was the question that I had before I finish this up? With all my guests, I always ask them like one last question before like wrapping up like the whole podcast and everything.
Okay.
And that question to you would be, what's the one thing right now that Nandi is pursuing? And if like they got it, life would be either better, you'd be at a better space to have more fulfillment, meaning. What's the one thing that you think right now you're actually in pursuit of? Maybe it's having like, daughters, 2 little daughters, twinning. Maybe it's like, your project blowing up into certain like kind of like, hemisphere where you're bringing all different people like in Africa to come and have that conversation.
Yeah, I'm in the pursuit of abundance. I'm in the pursuit of mental, emotional, and economic wealth because I think that, I'm at the point where I've been doing so much work on the inside of myself. I'm ready to see a reflection of that on the outside of myself. And so I am pursuing, exposure. I'm pursuing the opportunity to hold big groups, to hold talks, to hold seminars. I'm pursuing the schools in Kenya. I'm pursuing all the things that I can, that I feel that I am now ready to be able to engage in, to get the word out and to start bringing our country together, to start bringing a united Africa together, because that is what we need to see right now, because the world is looking to Africa. And if we forget who we are in the process of all of this development and urbanization and everything like that, we're in the position to really be taken advantage of. And so we really need to become a united front, and I want to be a representation of that, and I want to be of service to that, and that's what I'm looking for, and what I'm in pursuit of. That's what I'm declaring to the universe.
Here's the thing. You said you flunked in your exams when, you're doing the whole classes when you started missing classes.
Oh, Harvard? Yeah.
How is that possible? You're just way too smart.
I was drunk.
Okay. Yeah. Because you're just
drunk.
way too smart. Like even how you're breaking down a lot of all these things. That also now definitely shows that if you're not definitely in control of like just your mind first of all, that's something to be really aware of. Mm-hmm. And then another question, just a last one before we finish anything. The last one. This is just an interesting podcast. What does that necklace mean? Throughout the interview, I've just been looking at it. I'm just saying, like,
You know what?
Yeah.
When I was in Cairo,
yeah,
my guide gave this to me, and I asked her the same thing. What does it mean? And she said, it doesn't mean anything. It's just symbols. But what's around it is the symbol of protection. So it was something that she gave to me, which is usually just an example of what it can look like as the guides when they take you around the pyramids and the Sphinx and everything like that. Mm-hmm. But she gave me this as for protection. But the words actually don't really mean anything.
You have to give me that contact if I'm going to Cairo anytime soon. But
No problem.
I think we've talked about everything that, and I'm just very intrigued on how you can just openly talk about all these things, because, there's somebody who I might invite in the podcast and then be like, I don't want to talk about this, and this. And you've been very open and transparent about so much, and I think that's what people need, like right now, because there's so much fakeness and like in social media and everything, and people easily like get into things where they really don't know how they can survive through and everything. So you've just put it out there, like you said, raw, uncut, like just learn from the podcast, there's anything that you can learn from it, if you want to contact her and ask about anything, how she went through A, B, C, and D, please reach out. Can they reach out first of all?
Yeah, completely.
So where can people find you?
They can
online?
find me on Instagram, just like you did, at Nandi Kegode.
Yeah.
You can find me on Facebook, Nandi Kegode, and you can also email me. My information is there on Facebook as well for nkegode@gmail.com. I'm very, very easy to get a hold of, and I'll respond quite quickly.
Wow. I was just like, what? Immediately? We can set it up? Pick a day. You actually just told me, pick a day and let me know. And here we go. Yeah. So I really appreciate everything. Is there anything else you have going on that you'd like to plug on the podcast? People can.
No, not so much. If there's a school or something that you think it would be useful to come and talk about addiction or emotional intelligence, or a parent wants to host a group at their house or something, or you want to reach out to me privately to have private conversations, please just let me know. I'm available, and I'm not here to judge anybody or to diagnose anybody. I'm just here to talk, and that's the main thing I want to do, is communicate effectively and to help you with whatever's going on in your life. That's it.
Wow. Ladies and gents, that was Nandi. Okay.
Kegode. Yes.
So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, and Castbox. And where else are we? Instagram. So I'll put all the links from her. Do you have a personal page for a different page for the emotional intelligence thing, or it's still on your personal page?
Yeah, it's still on my personal page.
Okay, yeah, but maybe after you develop, after a while, you'll definitely separate that entity from your...
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll put all the links down below from her social media handles, my social media handles. Make sure you follow. Keep listening. I appreciate the support and everything. It's the Kisscapades podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Bye.